Hello, everyone. This is Dewan Bland, and this is day 5 of the Quarantine Files. And I figured for day 5, I'll just switch it up a little bit. I want to give you all a visual short story called The Dreaming Cynic. Now, The Dreaming Cynic is a story I've been working on since about 2019, and this is going through various mediums that I wanted to do this in. At first, it was going to be a novel. I even wrote a prelude book, a prologue of short letters. Um, and then it was also going to be a feature length screenplay that I was just always going to have in my back tuck, just in case I ever made it in the film industry. But I want to do a scene by scene breakdown of what the Dreaming Cynic story would be, and also give you some fantasy casting if I just had all of the money and opportunity in the world. Okay? But let me give you some preface for the story before we get into it. So, The Dreaming Cynic is a dystopian tale centering black folks, or obsidians as they call themselves, who have been forced into villages by the rest of the world. The obsidian people do not give themselves names, they merely call themselves by their function in the village. The protagonist of the story is the dreamer. He is a storyteller for the sake of entertainment, and his stories are all inspired by dreams he has. That's easy to get, right? So for the casting of the Dreamer, I think Daniel Kaluuya, I think I'm pronouncing that right, as the Dreamer would be great. There has to be this deadpan seriousness to him, a profound thinker, but also deep cynicism. And I think Daniel was great at that. And after finishing the outline, there are some similarities to be made between this story and the story that was told in Black Mirror's episode 15 Million Merits. Okay, so let's start the story. It begins in the village during the Day of Remembering, which is the first day of this annual festival that the Obsidian people hold in their village. It starts with the tribe honoring those who have passed on to the Festival of Oceans, which is the Obsidian name for the afterlife. This year, the village elder has passed on, which means a new one must be chosen and given the great secret. See, in obsidian culture, long life is a rare thing, so family is a bit of a tricky situation. The idea of having names or parents has been done away with so that the hurt is more communal than personal should someone die. The elder is the only one who knows each and every parent-child relationship, and even only the most advanced in age people in the village knows that secret about the elder. I think the tribal elder here should be Jennifer Lewis, someone who could be regal, lighthearted, and stern. Anyway, so the elder is given the great secret, and one of her first duties during the Day of Remembering is to tell the story of the unprotected 10. So the Unprotected 10 is a story that takes place in the 2010s. There are 10 black women who are graduating from a predominantly white college, and they are the top 10 in their graduating class. The Obsidians wouldn't use the term black or white. It would be Obsidian and the Outsiders. Anyway, those 10 women are all decided for their graduation speech to share the stage and airways together to say that this shouldn't be a rare achievement, but this is the normal when white supremacy and mediocrity are not rewarded. So, a group of white students hears about this and plan a counter protest during the graduation. So, as the speech began, a riot breaks out. This riot quickly turns into a race war, and in the middle of it, a group of white men, all armed with semi-automatic weapons, murder the 10 women and immediately put their guns down. The cops show up and arrest these young men. The president at the time, or as Obsidians would call him, the king, decides to pardon these young men instead suggests they be sent to mental rehabilitation centers so their lives wouldn't be thrown away due to a momentary break in character, no matter how tragic. Protests begin throughout the country until the king agrees to meet with some of the community leaders to discuss the issue. He believes that they are requesting the immediate sentencing of those young men to life. The truth is, the meeting is a setup. The king is captured and killed, and the death has been broadcasted live for the world to see. So the world reaction is very mixed at first. Obsidians all around the world rejoice at what they deem to be justice, and others are quite afraid of the consequences. A cohort of world leaders are brought together on what repercussions should be for this action. Then they launch a multi-generational plan, which includes 1. Slaughtering obsidian people worldwide, bringing the population down to 10% of what it used to be, moving the remaining obsidian people to villages, removing all his history books from the obsidian people, strictly enforcing obedience for the remaining, with the punishment of death being the only recourse. The elder concludes the story by saying this is how the obsidian people have lived for the last 150 years worldwide. Day 2 of the festival begins, and the dreamer opens it by telling the story of the Festival of Oceans. The Festival of Ocean takes place on an endless beach where only obsidians live in peace and luxury. They sing songs of liberation, they have names and families, and they know each other. See, the dreamer ponders deeply about having a name and parents. To him, these things are human, but ultimately, humanity is fragile, so we can only truly be human in paradise. So after his story, he and the priest, played by Omar himself, Michael K. Williams, have a conversation. The priest believes these stories and dreams to be a gift from God, a prophetic message of the future path the obsidian people must take. The dreamer does not believe any of these things and says his dreams are merely entertainment, that if God exists, he doesn't care about the obsidians. The priest believes the dreamer to be the spark for a revolution, a Moses that may not see the promised land. The dreamer simply replies, revolution is what got them into the village. So later on, the dreamer goes to see a performance by this young lady who he is absolutely enthralled by. The dreamer isn't the kind of man who allows himself to be captive by many things. He thinks they are all temporary, but this woman cannot escape his mind. She is the poet, played by Janelle Monáe, because fam, it's Janelle. She performs a poem about the blessing that is the village, how others may view it as an isolation, but if there was a world out there that allowed the village to exist, those people have to be evil and did not deserve to be in community with the obsidian people. So after the performance, the dreamer tries to talk to the poet, and it is a very awkward conversation to say the least. There are attempts to flirt between the two, physical attraction, but she is a visionary, and her hopefulness only invokes how deeply cynical he is, and the conversation becomes both clumsy and charming. The judge, played by the legend himself, Leon, sees this interaction from afar and begins to talk to the dreamer after the poet leaves. His biggest judgment for the dreamer is that he believes in nothing, and that he is not a life worth living. Well, that is not a life worth living. Definitely not the kind of life a woman like the poet would desire. She cannot live without hope. So the next day is the Feast of Families, which begins with children's theater. The children put on this play where the premise of it is that one day an obsidian child will grow up to be king and they will live outside of the villages. The dreamer, who now stands with the priest and the judge, scoffs at the idea and says that children are poisoned with hope. After this, the priest tells the story of the father of men. It is basically the story of the gospel, or how we traditionally understand the gospel, and how one day all will join into the Festival of Oceans because of the sacrifice of one man that started a movement worldwide. Then comes the event that some obsidians look forward to and others detest, the time of selection. Each year, the outsiders choose an exceptional obsidian to entertain and produce for the world. This year, the poet is selected from the village. She is reluctant to go, but has no choice. This sends the dreamer into a defensive rant about the folly of love, especially love in the village. Now, we skip 1 year later. The dreamer is retelling the story of the Festival of Oceans, but this time there is a king and a queen of the festival. He sees himself and the poet as the king and queen of the festival, although he doesn't outwardly state this. He also adds a layer that the obsidians on the beach will wage an eternal war against the outsiders to protect the beach at all costs. In this story, though, the queen is captured, the king is vengeful, but ultimately has no plan of victory. During the time of selection, the The dreamer is chosen as the exceptional obsidian. Before leaving, he has one last conversation with the priest and the judge. The priest and the judge are ecstatic after hearing the new layers of his dream. They believe he has finally embraced his role as the spark for the new revolution. The dreamer says he isn't trying to spark anything, but simply explain life. The moment that people embrace the fact that obsidians will never win will be the first step to inner peace. The only way to luxury for him is assimilation. And so he believes he is going to live the life he deserves and reunites with the poet. So after being selected, the dreamer is taken away from the village. He arrives at the mansion where the exceptional obsidians are living. He is immediately disoriented by the luxuries around him, the diversity of people and their skin tone. He is curious how a world like this can be kept from his people, and how so many people are okay with it. He then is brought into a room to meet Adrian Beak, played by Jake Gyllenhaal. Now, Adrian Beak is the current president, or as the Obsidians would say, the king, and he is delighted to meet the dreamer. This is the dreamer's first interaction with someone with a name. He loves the story of the Festival of Oceans. It shows the joy and resilience of the Obsidians, but it doesn't allow them to win. Beak says, even the Obsidians' desire for war in the story reminds people the aggressive nature of black folks. This is the dreamer's first time hearing he's black. He prefers the phrase obsidian because his people came up with it. Adrian Beak says the story perfectly captures the essence of a black person who has learned their place. None of this sits well with the Senate. The dreamer is given his first performance of the Festival of Oceans story. He tells it exactly how he did the last time, but once the queen is captured, he commands the obsidians to wage war on the outsiders. In the story, the king kills the general of the outsiders, and the queen is killed as a result of this action. The dreamer then leaves the stage, and once backstage, he is escorted back into his room. The poet comes to visit him and warns him about the consequences of his actions. The dreamer says that the world deserves to burn. A just punishment for what they've done to the obsidians. The poet believes what he is saying, but her main concern is keeping him safe. She is not sure that revolution can come at the cost of the people she cares about. Also, they don't have an overt romantic relationship here either. The two care about each other for sure, and anything other than that has to take a backseat to the gravity of the moment that they are in. Adrian Beak is furious and has a very intense and physical confrontation with the dreamer. He wants him to know his place because blacks are the easiest people to replace. He goes down the list of exceptional people that have come and gone at his command, telling the dreamer that even the most exceptional obsidian is still obsidian. Up next is the poet's performance, the tsunami's omen. The poet gives a very cynical performance, which is basically a call to obedience for her people. It isn't in her nature to think like this, but at this point, she is concerned for safety, and those who make waves can create destructive ones, which will come at the loss of life, love, family, and a lot of other things. She used to dream until she realized that nightmares are dreams too. 1 year later, the dreamer tells the story of the Eternal War to begin the Obsidian Awards. In this version, though, the Obsidians lost the Eternal War, and the outsiders take over the beach and kill the Obsidian King, thus taking a fight away from all other remaining Obsidians. Then the Obsidian Awards commence. The dreamer finds out that every country is having the same show, but a different set of exceptionals, and each country has an obsidian that has the same function, just a different name. The dreamer meets an older obsidian played by Jesse L. Martin, one who has completely given up on hope and says that hope is a torturous thing. This is the moment where he completely loses the desire to be a part of this world and plots on his endgame. He internally accepts that he will be the spark, and the poet is witness to all of this. It is now that the poet turns to perform Ode to the Tsunamis, a sequel to her last poem. Unlike her previous piece, though, it is a champion of revolution, one that is okay with the storm coming, but it should come, and it should engulf the entire world. The crowd is visibly agitated by this piece. After this, Adrian Beek sends the poet back to the village as a punishment. Asked to do a live TV interview to regain the trust of the public to the Obsidian people. Adrian Beek, throughout the interview, insults the dreamer, trying to have him be the example of an obedient Obsidian. The dreamer finally snaps, saying the whole system needs to be done away with, and the day of reckoning will soon come. He is merely the alarm waking up the army. He then kills Adrian Beek, and he himself is killed immediately. The final vision of the endless beach that he has while dying is the dreamer and the poet as king and queen, with the Obsidian people ready for war. The vision fades, and we are back in the village with the poet, standing in the same position that she was in the dreamer's vision, giving a moving speech that ends with her telling people that it is time to be the tsunami. And that was the outline of the Dreaming Cynic story. If you like it, comment, like, share, subscribe, and let me know if you want to hear part 2 to this. Part 2 is the Poet's Revolution. And this has been day 4 or 5 of the quarantine.